through the mind of a harpist. You are about to relive with me a journey that occurred as I examined and edited a harp score for an opera entitled Dream Maker by Domenic Guastaferro. Due to its profusion of exemplary situations encountered by composers when writing for this challenging instrument, the Dream Maker harp part was selected for this presentation. The focus is primarily on two features unique to the harp that require attention while attempting to produce functional harp composition. These two items are pedals and placing. During our trip, you will become acquainted with petal matrices intended to assist harpists during rehearsals and composers during their writing processes. Additionally, you will encounter the effective use of In-Harmonic Spellings, pedal change organization, and rhythmic integration of pedal changes. Equally important is the comprehension of hand placement and subsequent desirable notation divided between the staves. Unlike piano scores, the treble and bass clef indications are employed more interchangeably in harp composition. The fact that harpists need to place fingers securely on strings before plucking necessitates special configurations. In this picture, my hands are placed securely on 8 strings. The 5th fingers are not used in harp performance. Another unique feature of harp performance is the need for dampening. Plucked strings resonate for an indeterminate length of time until dampened. In this picture, the left hand is in a dampening position. Ignorance of these issues may be bliss for composers, but nightmares for harpists when viewing and attempting to play new works. Although there may be differences of opinions among harpists concerning the details I present, my edited scores will, nonetheless, likely save hours and hours of preparation time. A well thought out product, visible to the viewer, also may be the factor in whether a harpist agrees to tackle your composition. I leave you with a quote of harpist Myra Coveri after viewing one of my earlier works. Dear Shirley, you deserve an award from Amnesty International. You have just saved every harpist who plays that piece from being tortured. Myra Coveri. At the base of the harp are 7 pedals: E, F, G, A, B, C, and D. These correspond to the 7 letters of our musical alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. When pedals are in the upper position, they are in the flat position. Often it is assumed that that upper position represents the sharp position. However, the fact is, when the pedals are in the upper position, no extra tension has been added to the strings. When I move this E pedal down into the middle notch, which is the natural position, little levers move at the top of the harp, putting added tension on the string, making the pitch go up. When I move the pedal down into the sharp position, more tension is put on the strings. The E pedal controls all of the E strings. Similarly, the F pedal controls all the F strings. Therefore, it is not possible to have 2 versions of the same letter name note. We cannot have E flat and E natural at the same time, or E flat and E sharp at the same time. The use of in-harmonic spellings can be very useful in making, for example, an E natural, and we can have like an E sharp in the form of F natural. It should be obvious that making a wrong pedal change can be a performance disaster. An erroneous change will continue to affect all corresponding strings, thereby multiplying the original error until it is changed back to the desired position. If one is performing a piece with multiple changes, it can be difficult to ascertain which pedal is wrong, creating a distraction that can lead to even more mistakes. Clarity of pedal moves is vital to secure an excellent technical proficiency. This is a pedal matrix. When a pedal is above the horizontal line, it is in the flat position. When the pedal marking is through the line, it is indicating the natural position. When the pedal marking is below the line, it indicates the sharp position. The vertical line separates the right side pedal side from the left pedal side. Notice that on the left side are 4 pedals. On the right side, there are 3. Here we have another pedal matrix, clearly showing the flat position on the top. Natural position is represented by this line. Sharp position would be placings below that line. When adding pedal markings to your score, I recommend that you put right foot pedal markings above the left. So you can have an E over B, F over C, G over D, A over D, or any other of these combinations. It is possible to change 2 pedals at the same time if they are on opposite sides of the harp. Both pedals can go up. Both pedals can go down. Both pedals can go in the same direction. This is a picture of what it often feels like to be engaged in harp performance. You are now viewing the before and after pages from the opera entitled The Dream Maker by Domenic Guastaferro. I'm going to begin by discussing pedal issues. I see that there is a matrix right here between the 2 staves in a rather crowded position. I would rather that this matrix be put down below and over to the side, since I need to know what my pedals are supposed to be before I embark on performing this run. In the edited version, you will see that the matrix has been placed below the staff in advance of the performance of the first gesture. This matrix is correct. It contains in it an A flat. When I examine the notes coming up, I see that I will need an A flat pedal. When I come to this matrix, I notice an incorrect pedal marking because there has been no indication of a pedal change over here. I would need to have that change indicated in order to have a B flat in this matrix. Going on, I notice these changes between E natural and E flat, E natural, E flat happens a bunch of times here. And I quickly see that once I pull this E string, it will still be reverberating at the time I make that pedal change. So there's going to be an unwanted pedal noise each time this occurs. I fixed that problem simply by using an in-harmonic spelling. I turned the E natural into an F flat, and thereby I eliminated all those now unnecessary pedal changes. When I come to this moment, I see 2 rapid pedal changes in a row, an A natural to a G sharp, on 2 consecutive 16th notes, and these two petals are on the same side. This would be very dangerous to do. So what I did over here, I changed the G sharp in advance. I changed it in a place where I was not having to perform the G in any G string, so there wouldn't be any unwanted noise, and made the A pedal change on the downbeat over here. Because of having changed the E to an F flat, I now have to change the F to a natural position. I do that on the end of the first beat. That makes this a more secure possibility. In general, I try to integrate the pedal changes into the rhythmic structure of the music. So when I get to this point, I see that I'm going to need an E flat and B flat. I can change those at the same time. They are on opposite sides of the harp. And so I place the right foot over the left, the E flat over the B flat, and change those exactly on beat 1. I change this on beat 3, another strong place, or another strong rhythmic place. This one is A on the beat and F on the and. Over here I get E and B natural. These two pedals are changed back exactly on the beat. In the next major, I change pedals exactly on the beat. Coming to the third beat, I have a pedal change, so that now there is sort of a rhythmic pattern of change on 1, change on 3. Well, we've got some extra things to do here. Change on 1, change on 1, change on 1, change on 3, change on 1. This makes it much more facile for the harpist. Now I'm going to talk about the hand positions for this passage. This type of run is very common in piano music, but on the harp it is more difficult to perform because the crossing under of fingers is not so facile, and you have to grab several strings at once. It's important to remember that harpists have to have their fingers on strings before pulling them. It makes it much more simple if it's divided between the hands. So over here we have a clear representation that these 3 notes are to be taken by the left hand, which is in the lower staff, the next 4 by the right hand in the upper staff, 4 in the left, 4 in the right. Going on this page, I see a whole lot of notes in the bass clef. It is very unlikely that a harpist would play all of this with the left hand, partly because it makes it so much easier to divide it between the hands. So you will notice in the score over here, the after pages, those are all divided 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. So we have the right hand, the left hand, the right hand, the left hand, and we have 2 bass clefs. This is very common in harp music for the clef signs to be interchangeable. Concerning pedal issues on this page, I quickly noticed that there is a matrix here that's all crowded in between the staves and that it's difficult to read. It's essentially non-functional in that position anyway, because I need to know what the pedals are going to be before I start playing this. So it is better to have a matrix in advance. What I did on the edited page is I put in an arrival matrix. This shows where the pedals are at the time that the harpist finishes playing this passage. And then I looked ahead to see what pedals I was going to need in the next passage. Essentially, the next part is in the key of A. By knowing what this matrix has to be, I then know what pedals have to be changed in between. So I start with the G flat. I like to make both moves indicated if there are two moves necessary for the same pedal. So this pedal marking goes from G flat to G natural, and then G sharp. And at the time G sharp is changed, C sharp is changed. Both pedals go down. The foot moves right over to the F sharp. This foot moves over to the B natural. Both of these pedals go down. So if we have a B flat to a B natural, a G flat to a G natural, and an F to an F sharp, once we have made all of those changes, we come up with this matrix. This matrix tells the harpist what the pedals have to be in order to play this. These matrices are extremely helpful in performance, or in practicing and in performance. When conductors are rehearsing pieces, they often are not aware of the fact that when they just leap out somewhere and say, let's start right there, the harpist doesn't necessarily know where the pedals are at that moment. So these matrices are very valuable. Again, I see another matrix over here that is basically ineffective because it's placed right when the harpist starts. There's no chance to make any pedal changes there before performing this. The matrix should be in advance. So if you look in the edited version, you will see that it is in advance. And you will see that this matrix and this matrix are not quite the same. This matrix is incorrect. It is also noticed upon examining the situation that it is necessary to change a pedal to a G natural and an A flat in order to produce this matrix. Now I would like to look at the placement issues. At the beginning of this page, we see 4 notes and 4 notes and 4 notes. These are all placed up in the treble clef in the upper staff. In the edited version, the slurs are replaced by brackets. Those are more powerful for a harpist because brackets indicate placing. And this tells the harpist that it's possible to place all 4 of those notes at the same time. So the first 4 notes are up in the upper staff. Clearly the right hand will do those 4 notes, the left hand these 4, and the last 4 back in the right hand. When looking at this passage, it seems like there might be an easier way to proceed with the way the notes are distributed between the hands. So I elected to take the top notes out of these 2 chords and place them in the right hand, and I continued to do that in this next measure. What I produced as a result were these series of chords that have all the same configuration. It also simplified the left hand and made it easier to produce a melodic line, thereby creating some legato in this passage. So starting at this point, we have now just all single notes in the left hand. It's possible to place the first 3. And then by doing a thumb slide, it is possible to connect to these next 4 notes. We ran into an interesting problem when I came to this passage, this item, because there are 5 notes there. Well, it's not possible to place all 5 notes. And then I see another 5 notes here. It's not possible to place all 5 notes there, at least not with one hand. So when I looked more carefully at this, I noticed that these bottom 3 notes were the same notes that I was going to have in this chord. Huh. Well, that makes life a lot easier. I can place all 3 of those notes. And then I noticed those 2 top notes were the same also. So I now could place those 2 notes in the upper part. Notice that the G flat was replaced with an F sharp because I already have an F sharp. And if I keep using an F sharp, I don't have to make a pedal change. One might wonder why this E flat was not a D sharp. Since we already had that, why would there be a pedal change? The reason for that is that there is a D natural soon after, so the decision was made to change the E flat and D at the same time. Notice again in this section that the part is divided between two hands. The right hand in the upper staff, the left hand in the lower one. Of note here is the use of a dampening sign. This bracket includes all of the notes that have just previously been plucked. It was important to dampen them since there was going to be the necessity to change F to F natural, and we've had a series of notes that could still have some reverberation. Might have been possible to change the pedals a little later, but just for safety reasons, it was deemed necessary to do the dampening here. Dampening signs also might be required in places. For example, if there was going to be a total silence for some reason in this measure, the conductor might not want the harpist notes to be hanging over into this area. When we come to this passage right here, again, it was divided between the hands. It was noted that we had a repetition of 3-note pattern here, and then we had just 2 notes by themselves that we put in the left hand. So this made the passage very quickly perceivable. In other words, the harpist can look at this and quickly ascertain what to do with the right hand and what to do with the left hand. Instead of having all the pedals jammed up as they are over here, it was decided to change the C natural in advance because it was not going to affect anything going on here. And it was possible to change the G flat and B flat at the same time. So that simplified what to do with the feet. The left foot could simply go from the C natural and move over to the B flat. The G flat here the foot is on the G flat pedal. It can then simply move over to the A natural, and then it moves back to the G natural. So we try to have the foot motion as well thought out as possible. When looking at the original score, it is noticed that there is no pedal matrix over here, and there are no pedal changes indicated. However, there are pedal changes that need to be made before we can come up with this matrix and proceed with the music. Again, we have a section that looks like it should be or could be in the key of A with a key signature. In some ways, that's more desirable than having all these accidentals because accidentals tend to make harpists think that there are going to be lots of pedal changes. And in fact, there's only one pedal change necessary in this section. So when we come back to here, we see that we need a series of pedals to be changed in order to proceed with the music. And again, we tried to do this in some sort of organized fashion. We're changing E and B at the same time. Most likely, this was an E flat and B flat, so both pedals will be going down. Then the left foot moves right over to the adjacent C, changes to C natural before going to the sharp. When it changes to C sharp, the F sharp can be done with that. So now we have the right foot above the left and they both go down. And I suspect these are both pedal changes that are also going to move downward. The foot moves from the F to the G pedal. This moves from the C to the D pedal. Now we have this matrix. You will notice the difference between the way this is set up and this, because again, we rearrange some of the notes and we also take out the slurs, which are often more of a hazard than a help, and put in a bracket where necessary. But first, I'm going to discuss what's going on with the rearrangement of the notes. I took some notes out of the upper part in order to help the right hand become more facile so that it has the possibility of playing as legato as possible. So I took a note out there and there and there, and I created a series of chords with the same configuration, which is always an easier proposition for a harpist than changing each one. So the hand position is the same. I took some more notes out. We come up with 2 more chords. They're different from these, but these 2 are the same. And then I have another series of chords that are all the same, except that we add 1 note. And then it's possible to place the last 3. Concerning the right hand, it's possible to place those 3 notes with the brackets. Once the harpist has played this note, it's possible to replace on this one without pulling off. Then there's a thumb slide here so that the harpist can still stay attached to the strings. This dotted line means to come over and attach to those 3 notes. The harpist would have to pull off at that point in order to play those 2 notes. Then it's possible to place the C sharp and D, use a thumb slide, and you see the dotted line again so that you can attach over to those 2 notes. The harpist, it's most likely to pull off here so that she or he can place all 3 of those notes. It is possible to reach down with the 4th finger and attach to this A, and then it's possible to place all of those notes, connect back to that one, and connect to this one. So now in this moving, dreamlike passage, we have the possibility of some legato harp playing. I notice a lot of pedal moves here, sort of floating around. Doesn't look like they're very well organized. So I took a look at that and noticed that we don't really need to have this E flat. I mean, there is an E flat here, but we have a D sharp, and so there's no reason why not to keep that as a D sharp. That means that we don't have to have that pedal change, and then we wouldn't need to have this one. When we get to this chord, we are going to need a G natural for sure, because we have that there. And we're going to need a C natural in this chord, so it's possible to change G at the C and C at the same time, so that's what was done. That eliminates sort of having the C float around. We've got it up between the staves, and down here we don't need to see all of that. We just need clearly to see G and C at the same time. Then I changed the D natural on this beat because I see a D natural coming down the road. So it's a good place to change that and be ready for that move. Right here are a bunch of pedal changes. Doesn't really help me to know any rhythm, how I would change these. I don't even know if they're all necessary, but we're going to take a look. When I look down the pike, I am going to need a G flat. And so might as well change that right there because my foot is already on that pedal. And I'm going to come over and make a change for an F natural there. Now, in his part, he has an F sharp. Then you have to change to an F natural, and you have to go back to an F sharp. That's awkward. It's much easier to have a G flat in the first place, and then I don't need all those pedal changes, and I can concentrate on the way I'm going to perform the notes. We only need one other pedal here, and that's the C sharp for when we come to this particular place. So we have now organized these pedal changes and made it clear what actually really needs to take place there. When we come here, we really don't need to have a D flat because we have a C sharp, so we might as well just keep that there to avoid having a pedal change. And if we had to have that pedal change, we'd have a whole lot of pedal changes all of a sudden right there. Which would not be possible to do because D and B are on the same side. We couldn't change those pedals at once. Why not just keep the C sharp? That certainly makes life easier. And then we need one more pedal, an A flat. He also has an F natural over here. But if we change F natural over here, there's no need to make an F sharp anywhere in here, so we don't need that pedal either. And notice, again, we come to an arrival matrix. We've gone through a number of pedal changes, it would be very hard for the harpist to know exactly where the petals are going to be when finishing this passage. So for a safety reason, it's good to put those petals in there, and then we know what petals we have to change in order to go on. Immediately noticeable are all these petal changes floating around in an ether world. And we have, again, slurs that aren't necessary, that just sort of makes things more complicated to look at. So upon examination of the music, it was ascertained that G natural and A natural were going to be necessary in order to go on with this next section. When I looked at it just again here recently, I see that we could have made the C natural over here also. We wouldn't need to make it here. And I also noticed we have an F sharp in this matrix, so we don't need an F sharp there. So the line gets even simpler. However, after we make the G and A natural, we still need a C natural for this chord, so I put that there. We need a C sharp for this chord. That's all we need, just 2 petals. We just need a C natural again here. When we go to C sharp here, we have a problem because this C is still going to be reverberating from playing it there. That's why we have a dampening sign right there to dampen that bottom note when that pedal is changed. At this point, there look like a lot of pedal changes. I find all this very confusing. And what I noticed is I have a C sharp, so why do I need a D flat? And I also have an F sharp, so why do I need a G flat? So by keeping those 2 there rather than changing to G flat and D flat, all I need to have here is a B flat, so I make that pedal change. Then for this C flat, I made it a B natural, and I rearranged the notes and put this as an octave in the left hand. This isn't going to cause any big problem because at the time this B natural is made, the hand will be placed back on that string, so there should not be any pedal noise. Then I kept this as an F sharp. No reason to have a G flat. We already have an F sharp. Besides that, if it's a G flat, I'd have to change 2 notches in order to go to this G sharp at this point. And there's no reason to have an A flat here. We don't need to have that pedal marking. And additionally, I had looked ahead and saw some real big issues coming up in this line. Whoa, lots of pedal changes. And this, and this are all on the same side. So I don't know, the foot would have to be on some kind of an accelerator in order to do this with the 32nd notes going on. So I looked ahead to see if there's anything we could do to play what's here and to make it possible to do that. So I did some In-Harmonic Spellings. We had a G sharp made from here, so we kept the G sharp. We already had a C sharp. We already, well, no, we didn't have a D sharp, but we have it right there. And we had an F sharp from before. So we don't really need to make any pedal changes except for the D sharp for that. Then this next group of notes has a C natural and F natural. I have C sharp and F sharp over here. So I'm going to have to do those 2 pedals. I'm going to make an F natural and C natural. These are just repetitions of those groups, so all I have to do now is keep my feet on the same pedals and put them back in the F sharp, C sharp position. So we can do that rhythmically. We do this on 1, this is on and, this is on 2, this is on and. We don't have to make any changes here. We have it on and, 4, and. It still might be an option to do this as a glissando. Depends on how fast this is going to be. If it was a glissando or it turned into a glissando, we could still do these pedal changes. It probably wouldn't be as accurate, but it could be effective. Now we have eliminated these pedal changes that are just sort of flying around in the ether world. There are some interesting placement issues on this page. If we look at this passage, it's all in the treble clef, which would indicate that it should be played with the right hand. However, that would not be facile for a harpist. So what I elected to do was to take the first two notes here, put them in the right hand, take the next three notes and put them in the lower staff in the left hand. And then I began to notice, okay, we have three notes there that are repeated at the end of the measure in reverse order. They come up again, then they come back again at the end of that measure. That makes placing more facile. In the right hand, it will have to place four notes there, and then it's going to replace those same four notes going the opposite direction. That makes life a good bit easier. However, we have one problem, and that is that upper note, because I can't place 5 fingers here, only 4. So I decided to take the left hand and have it go over the top and play that note. Creates a little bit of theater also. And it works out very well. There is time for this hand to go above the right hand because we have a quarter rest. And there is time for this hand to replace it. Note it's not very far away at any rate, but it still has 3/4 of a beat in order to get in that position. So the right hand has this position, that position. The left hand has this position, and then the crossover, and then back. When I get to this point, I see some real problems. This would be more possible for a piano player than for a harpist because it necessitates for a harpist doing a lot of pulling off the way it is notated here. I wanted to make this simpler, so what I did is take the bottom note off of the octaves and make a melodic line out of those for the left hand. This probably should be an overlapping bracket, or there should be dots between those two notes because it is possible to replace from the E flat to the G flat. And then in the right hand, this bracket actually should have been directed, connecting these two items. It would be possible to place that. Then the harpist would have to pull off in order to replace fingers on those two notes. At that point, the harpist can simply reconnect and go back and forth through those notes until we come to the next 8th note. And then the harpist would have to pull off and replace and then go through and play all of these in a connected fashion until we get to this 8th note. Pull off, replace, and go through those notes. Again, we see a matrix that's placed right below where the harpist is going to begin to play. We also see it doubled up in between the two staves. Essentially useless in this position. We need to know what that matrix is going to be before we start this. This looks like another one of those A major passages. It occurs about 3 times, the moving dreamlike music. So you'll see that this was treated just like the passage that that happened before, so that we have some continuity in the way that we deal with issues. So the notes were taken out of this upper part and placed in the lower hand. Again, we see the 3 chords that we had before that are all the same configuration. When we get over here, we see 2 chords with the same configuration. Took notes out from the right hand. No, we didn't need to do that there. Okay. So we have this situation where we want to make the right hand as facile and as legato as possible. So we use a bracket and connect those. We do a thumb slide just as we did before, connect over to this, pull off, place those 2 notes. This looks like it's a bit different than it was the first time. We can now place those 2 notes, play that. Actually, this whole thing can be placed. The D and E inside of this B can be placed. This would have to be pulled off. Then it would be possible to place all those notes, reconnect to this note, and then to play the octave in a connected fashion. Notice it, the octave doubling was taken out here so that we could create a legato line. There are also some in-harmonic spellings here. In this original score, we have a B flat here. Notice it's been changed to an A sharp there. If we had a B flat, we had a problem because right there we would have a B natural. So we would have to change a pedal quickly again in order to do that. This solves that problem. When we change to the A natural, it's not going to be a problem because the finger will already be back on this string, stopping its reverb, and so we won't have a pedal noise. You'll notice here that the A flat has been changed to a G sharp. Again, we would have had a problem because we have an A right there. We would have had some pedal noise going into an A flat. The G flat has been changed to an F sharp. On this page, we see a line that's all in the treble clef. It is really a very simple matter to divide that between the two staves and have two notes here in the left hand that are repeated. Looking at that, it's real clear what the left hand has to do. And then the right hand does all of the other notes, the 16th note groupings. And it's really clear here at the end that the left hand will have 4 notes to place. The right hand will have 4 notes to place in the upper staff. Again, you'll see pedal changes before we have a matrix. So this matrix tells me that when I start this passage, I'm going to have 4 flats: B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. The pedal changes again are organized. I start with the inside pedals and change E flat and B flat at the same time. E flat over B flat. I move my feet over to adjacent pedals, change F natural and C natural. I move my foot from the A, skip the G, go over, from the F, skip the G, go over to the A, and I make one change, and then I make another change along with the D flat. Now I have this matrix. At the end of this section, there are some more pedal changes that are required. So I start with the matrix that I have when I get to this point, and then I see what pedals I need to change so that I can come up with this pedal matrix. In this, I put the pedal change markings right when my finger was going to go onto that string. If you notice in this, the pedal changes are all a little in advance. This is right on the beat. So now they are rhythmically connected to what the performance is playing with the hands. The harpist's job is pretty apparent here and quite doable. These notes can all be played with the left hand, and those can be played with the right. The problem occurs when you have a run that goes up and involves crossing fingers under. In the edited version, you will see a bracket which suggests to the harpist that they can go from these 2 notes and then place these 4 notes, start up the scale, cross under the 3rd finger, and continue up the scale. That's a little bit awkward to do. You will notice in the next section, at this 4/4, you have a chord here that involves the right and the left hand. I elected to keep that all in the left hand, which was very possible to do, so that the right hand would not have to change position and could just stay in this same area. It's always more difficult for a harpist to leap around changing position, so if you can avoid it, that is a better idea. It should make the performance more accurate, or tend to have a chance of being more accurate. It became obvious to me very quickly that there was a problem right here because I'm seeing E flat, G flat, and A flat pedal changes indicated as if they could be done all at the same time, and they cannot be. So I needed to look carefully at that to see what the possibilities were. So I decided to change to a G sharp on this chord, because that G sharp would give me an A flat. So that takes care of that note. Then I see that I already have an F sharp, so that takes care of the G flat. Just leave it alone as an F sharp. And then I would need an E flat. That's easy to make. And that's all I have to do, that chord, just sort of rewrite those notes, and that makes this a possibility, a viable possibility, I should say. I noticed quickly that there's a B flat, and so I might as well change those two pedals at the same time. When I get over to here, there is required an F natural. To an F sharp, that's a bit problematic because this is moving in 16th notes, and in order to play that string again, the finger has to go back on it and place. That's a little bit awkward. So it was decided to just do a pedal slide. There should be an X through that note, something to indicate that this string does not need to be plucked again. The use of the word pedal slide ought to do the trick. And then you'll see that there's a dampening sign. Well, it's there because we need to change the pedal back to F natural at this point. And if that's still ringing, we would have a problem with pedal noise. Now, we also need a G natural. Notice it goes to a natural first and then to a flat. Apparently, it was in a G sharp position, and so there were two changes necessary there. And we need an A flat here. Once we have those pedals in position, we have this matrix of 4 flats. It was decided in this section to make some alterations due to placing issues. So you will notice that when you come to this chord and go on, that there are no 2 notes in there as there were over here. Here the chord was repeated. That didn't seem necessary to me because those notes are going to be ringing anyway, and it made it simpler for the harpist just to place those 2 notes and then continue. It was also decided to take out that final B flat so that the harpist had a moment in order to place those 3 notes. In order to create a symmetry here, the second note here was taken out. So now we have the same rhythm pattern 2 times. The next measure was such a nightmare that the composer decided just to eliminate all of the upper chords. Because you can see here, in order to do this chord, we need to change to an E natural, we need a C sharp, we need an A natural. 3 pedals would have to be changed simultaneously. These 2 are on the same side of the harp at the farthest possible configuration. The E has to move all the way over to the A. Then over here, we would need 3 more pedal changes. We need to have a D natural. We would need to have a B and G natural. B and D are on the same side, the farthest apart that they possibly can be, etc. So that was totally eliminated over here. And the rest of this simply is a repetition of what we've already had. We come to this point, we have an arrival matrix. The issues on this page are mostly in regard to placing. Here it is clear that we can organize this into groups of 3, 3, 3, 3, as we have done over here. Makes it totally clear that the left hand will do this, the right hand, left, right, left, right. And we took out the slurs. In the next line, it became apparent that if we play this chord, then we could group 3 together, 4 together, and the right hand would be available for this note. All of these ties and this sustained chord is irrelevant because once the chord has been played, it's just going to ring for however long, likely not longer than this measure, if that. So all of these slurs and ties and notes were taken out. It wasn't necessary to have this dotted quarter note here. We just have it as an 8th note. Again, it's going to ring the same length of time, whether we think of it as being a dotted quarter or simply as an 8th. And then the rest of this line was divided between the hands. These two notes went to the left hand, these two to the right hand. Playing all of these notes with the right hand in the treble clef is not particularly problematic, so it was decided just to leave them in a single staff in the treble clef, as we did over here on the edited page. We made a little alteration to the pedal markings by placing them on beats. So the D natural occurs right on beat 2 or beat 4, however one is looking at this. And this is right on beat 1. The dotted line shows that the harpist can keep her foot on that pedal. And again, we have a situation where the harpist can stay on the B pedal. So we change A natural and B flat at the same time. Notice the right foot over the left, right foot over the left, very organized. The G pedal foot moves over to the A, then it has to move all the way over back to the E. There's plenty of time to do that in here. This is not fast. And we have 2 eighth note durations, which gives time to move that foot. Here we have a B flat pedal. Foot stays on it, it changes back on a beat, and this changes on a beat. We have an interesting situation that comes up. Again, we see E flat to E natural, E flat to E natural occurring all through this section. So since this might be some sort of problematic pedal change happening here, it was decided to do it as a pedal slide and to make this bottom note staccato, which there's time to do because the harpist can pluck the string and immediately put the finger back on the string to stop it. Staccato notes involve dampening, and so there is time to dampen that note, and that's what this little sign is indicating right there. So now we have kind of created a little type of harpy gesture with the pedal slides. And that works really well through this whole section. And then it was noticed over here again, all these pedal changes, that this did not seem viable. And so I looked at it to see what else might happen here. So we came to this E natural. I noticed that we still had a G flat from our Petal Matrix up here. We are going to need an A flat pretty quickly, so let's make that right there. And we're going to need a B flat. So it was a simple thing to make the pedal changes A and B flat at the same time right there. Get them out of the way. Then we're going to need an E flat. Made that pedal change right on a major beat. And one more pedal F flat right on the beat. That's all possible. Whoa, we get over here and there are a bunch of sharps. And I see a lot of pedal changes there. As it turns out, it wasn't really necessary to do that because these are the same 3 notes we just had over here. That's the same note. We had the D flat. Well, we're kind of in this area of using pedal slides, so let's make that D natural just a pedal slide. And then we have our E flat. We already have a pedal for that. Instead of just doing all of these notes with one hand, it was divided up between the staves in the edited version. So the left hand did the first note on each beat, created a little bit of a melodic line there in the left hand. The pedal change here is not going to be a problem because that finger will always be back on that E string at the time the pedal is changed. So that should avert any pedal change noise. When we get down to here, this is a little bit interesting because of the pedal changes, the order. So you notice that the right foot is just going to go from A, right next to it is G natural, right next there is F, and then E, D, and C. The C could have been changed with the F, but it was decided just to get those out of the way. Now all the pedals are in the natural position except one. We still have a B flat here. In the edited version, we simplified the notation. In this version, there is a 30-second rest during the course of this glissando. We took out the slur because if you have glissando, there isn't anything that's going to happen except a slur. And it's probably not going to happen that a harpist is going to do 7 notes and stop on a 30-second note. So it was just put together so that as one glissando with an ad lib. At this point, we did not use 2 staves for this because it just involved 6 notes. But the harpist can place these 3 in the left hand and those 3 in the right hand. Here is another glissando. Notice these glissandos on this page are pretty scalar. A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, and G flat. That is one way you can deal with glissandi. On this page, it continues with the scalar use of a glissandi, the A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, and G flat. However, when we get down here, the glissando is set up to be more of an emphasis on a chord. And in order to have that occur, some pedal changes needed to be made. So we changed an A natural and B natural right at the end of this glissando. Might be a bit problematic in terms of creating some pedal noise. Didn't know how to avoid that. Right on beat 1, we can change 2 pedals and then quickly change to an F sharp. It would not have to be here on this beat. It could be as early as possible, but because it probably, the harpist is not going to be real aware of where these ands are. What we come up with now is an A, C sharp, E, and we would have a 6th. So we would have an A major chord with a 6th. We have A, B, that's a non-chord tone. C sharp and D flat are both C sharp, so that's the 3rd of the chord. Then we have E, and then we have 2 versions of F sharp and G flat. That's a different sound than a scalar arpeggio. It really emphasizes the chord of A major, or A major with an added 6th, which might be very desirable depending on the context of the score. By now, some of these placing issues ought to become apparent. Here we have a situation again of 4 notes, 4 notes, 3 notes, and 4 notes. The slurs were taken out, brackets were added, and in this case, the hands were not divided between the 2 staves because it was thought that the overall line was important and that it would be obvious to the harpist what to do just by seeing that. However, when we get into this measure here, these notes were divided between the hands, and we see 4 notes in the bass clef and 4 notes in the bass clef also, except in the upper staff. So we now know this is left hand, right hand, right hand, and we have left hand. Makes this very doable. In the next line again, we took out the slurs. The brackets were left out here. They could be there just for consistency, but it's okay that they're not. When we come to this measure and we see this whole line, it became more apparent what was going on in it by dividing it between the hands using the 2 staves. So we have here G, B, D flat, and F sharp, right hand, right hand. Notice the dampening sign. Dampens all the notes that were just previously plucked so that we can comfortably change pedals here without worrying about making pedal noise. Here are more placing issues. They should be very obvious. The composer used LH and RH and LH and RH. That is sometimes used to designate which hand performs the music. I think it probably is not necessary here. Most every harpist that I can think of would pretty much automatically know how to group those notes. And the brackets just show these are placed by one hand. So left hand, right hand, right hand, all the way through this whole section. Again, we have a dampening sign that I bring to your attention. so that we don't have to worry about making pedal noise when we change the pedals. We have another arpeggio glissando here. And this glissando is emphasizing an A major 7th chord. So we have the A, we have a B natural, the passing note, 2 C sharp and B flat, 2 E's with E and F flat, and a G. So now it's going to sound very much like an A7 chord. Again, this is all dampened. A lot of notes to dampen this time because that's dampening thing encompasses all of these early notes down here. We have time to do some pedal changes because of a hold here. This is a place that might be wise to alert a conductor to, because depending on what's going on here, you may not have very much time to change these pedals. But at any rate, again, we have a series of pedals to change before we do the new glissando. In this glissando, we're going to have an A, B, C natural and a D sharp. We're going to get a kind of A minor, exotic minor kind of sound. These two pages look almost identical. It would have been possible to take these slurs out, but it didn't seem to make much difference if they were there or not. So we just decided to leave them in. The main difference between this page and this page is that in the edited version, I put in some fingerings. So if the harpist does a 1 slide 1 and has this placed, all of this whole passage can be done legato without ever pulling off anywhere. The left hand can also be performed legato by using a 1 slide 1. So it's possible to do that slide and then replace all those notes. There were some problems when we got to this intersection. I decided it was a better idea to leave this note be B flat rather than a C sharp. We already had 2 pedals to change here for the B and the E, so that was enough for that position. Then when we got over here, we needed to have an F sharp and an A. The A pedal seemed more important to me, so I made the A pedal change there. It might be possible to slip in an F sharp pedal at this point. I don't know, it seemed a little risky, so I just left it out and put the F sharp back in when we came to the second measure where I could gracefully make that change. And I also left the C sharp out of this measure. Instead of having that C sharp, we maintained the D flat until we got to this measure and then included the C sharp. This passage looks very similar to the beginning, except that the composer put in these sustained notes in the middle. That was problematic. I didn't think it was necessary because those notes are all going to be plucked and resounding all the time anyway, reverberating. And if in order to do that, there would have to be a pull off, which would interfere with the legato playing. The left hand was really difficult because I don't think this can be placed by any harpist. It would require a big gap between the 4th and the 3rd fingers, and I know I can't do that. So it was decided to take those chords out and just play those lines and make them be legato. We have seen this moving dreamlike passage before, the passage that looks as if it is in the key of A. Again, this matrix should have been back here where it's more useful. You can see it over here in advance of the playing. And this is an exact duplicate of what we've had before. You can see these 3 chords that are all the same, and these 2 that are the same, the E to F sharp, and you see these 3 chords. The connection of those notes, this ending might be a little bit different. But the issues are all the same, putting some notes in the left hand in order to alleviate some complications from the right hand so that it potentially can be more melodic and more legato. On this page, it was a simple matter of dividing up this single line between the two hands. It was very easy to just put one note in the left hand, leaves the right hand in a position where it can place those three notes, and it can place them again. It's just going up and down the same three notes. Changes a little bit over here. So this became quickly perceptible. A harpist is going to look at that and know exactly what to do. Right hand, left hand. Period. More placement issues on this page. This becomes immediately apparent what to do when it's arranged 4, 4, 4, 4, etc. Very clear. We need the matrix in advance. We put our pedals in position, place 4 notes, 4 notes, and 4 notes. In order to arrive at this matrix, we need to make the pedal changes A and D natural on the out. They're both pedals on the farthest outside positions. Then the inside positions, these are both going to go down. These are both going to go down. These are going to go in opposite directions. That's why it was done like that. And this, it's very clear to make this an arpeggio. Again, we took out the complication, rhythmic complications, and just made it a straight arpeggio, not arpeggio, a glissando, without having to worry too much about the groupings. In this measure, we took this chord, put it in the left hand so that the right hand could place those 3 notes, and then the left hand those 3. The right hand will play this chord. There's plenty of time to get set up for those notes. The left hand can do all of this. That is all very clear. And these pedal changes were necessary in order to set up this glissando. So what do we have here? It looks like we have a C major type of arpeggio here. So let's check that out. We have a C natural, we have a D, we have an E. We have the E doubled by making an F flat. We have a G, we have an A, we have the C doubled by making a C sharp. So again, we have an arpeggio that basically proceeds on a chordal outline or stresses a chord. Although this looks very fancy and interesting, the actual fact is that the doubling here is not as effective as, or probably not as effective as just doing a single note going up. The reason being is that the left hand part, or the bottom line part, is going to constantly be dampening out what the right hand just played. This might be done between the hands. It's probably more likely going to be done with 2 fingers in the right hand. So we elected just to have single glissandos. And we have that happening down in here. This looked a bit problematic because of these D flat, D natural pedal changes, when it is so much easier to use C sharp instead of D flat and eliminate the problem of pedal changes. And then it was decided to start this with the right hand instead of the left. The inclination for most harpists would be to start that with the left hand because it's in the bottom staff and because it's in the bass clef. But I thought it would be nicer to end with the right hand in the upper position. So in order to have that happen, this started with the right hand, this with the left, this was the right hand. I suspect that by now you're going to pretty much know what I'm going to say about this page. Basically, the issue is to divide this line between the hands. It's more graceful. It's not so much fun to sit there on the harp and have the right hand just repeating the same notes. And it's also a little bit more theatrical to have the 2 hands in motion. This was a special problem, a bit intriguing, because there's a sustained pedal marking here, and there is no sustained pedal on the harp, at least there isn't on mine. So it was not possible to do what was suggested here, or what was desired. I wrote in the pedal changes here, and so what would happen now is the harpist would play this note, replace a finger, and when that finger was replaced, it would dampen that previous string. So now we have C sharp, we have D. When the finger is replaced on D, To make the sharp, it's again going to dampen some sound, and we have the same situation between the F and the F sharp. One possibility here would be just to have pedal slides, C to C sharp, D to D sharp, E, F, F sharp. That might be the closest approximation of the desired effect. We have had this kind of construction crop up earlier. It was dealt with in the same manner as it was earlier by taking the bottom note from the octave and putting it in the left hand, making the left hand as legato as we possibly could make it. This can be bracketed and placed. This can be placed. This can be placed. And in the right hand, the upper notes can be placed. And then we have this back and forth thing. This would not need to be pulled off until after the first beat here. Then these two can be placed. And again, we can go back and forth and connect all of that. It would be necessary to pull off here in order to play those two notes because you'd have to replace the finger on the G. Okay. So once again, we make the delineation of the hands clearer by using two stays. So this is going to be the right hand, left hand, and the right hand. And in this case, the left hand is going to go over the top and place that note. It has plenty of time to do that. And it's not possible to place all 5 of those notes. And after that, we need a bracket so that we can make some pedal changes and proceed into our next section, back to that sort of dreamlike moving A major passage that's recurring. Notice also that we needed to make some pedal changes here. It was not indicated in this music. It says that it's supposed to be all flats here. Well, I haven't checked that out. I don't know if that's necessary or not. Apparently not, because we have an F sharp and an E natural. And that's good because then we don't have so many pedal changes over here. Thank you for traveling with me through the Dream Maker. May your endeavors to compose for the harp be greatly enhanced. Happy harping!